This is Talk. Thank you very much, Steve, for your company. 11:36 is the time. Let's talk to our next guest now, Chairman of Republicans Overseas, Greg Swenson. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much, Steve, for joining us. I want to talk first of all about your president, then we'll talk about your vice president currently in the UK and some accusations about the UK's human rights status and issues right now, Greg. So lots to cover. But let's talk about this meeting Donald Trump is having with the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, in Alaska on Friday, which they've decided not to invite Zelensky to. It's supposed to be a sort of ceasefire talks, a peace summit. But the president has now said that this is a listening exercise. He wants to listen to what Putin has to say. What more do we need to hear from Vladimir Putin about what he wants from Ukraine than we don't already know?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of an exploration mission, as you pointed out, Julia. I think so. I'm not sure what to expect. I'm not sure the president knows what to expect, but anything's better than body bags piling up. Is the view of this president. He's, as you know, he's very much an anti-war president. He's settled, 4 or 5 conflicts around the world in just his first 6 months in office, and he's going to give it a try. He's been trying. He's frustrated, as he's also said several times. He's definitely frustrated with Putin. I think the tariff or the sanctions threat probably worked, at least so far. That's why, remember Putin didn't show up in Istanbul. He's fired missiles into Kyiv every time, often after conversations with the president or with Steve Witkoff, the special envoy. And so, I think President Trump is frustrated on one hand, but he doesn't want to just walk away because.
Well, he doesn't have to walk away. What he could do is exact opposite. That's what Putin wants him to do: is be frustrated and walk away, and then not actually do anything to push Vladimir Putin. Because there was some hope in the last month that he sort of hardened up some of his talk about Vladimir Putin. He seemed to have realised that he's being taken for a fool and treated as a bit of a chump by Vladimir Putin. The rest of the world is watching on. That, funnily enough, you can't trust what Putin has to say, and he's not the victim in this. He's the aggressor. There was some hope, but then he seemed to soften his words yet again. Now, I realise that, Ukraine is not the biggest single issue in the world, certainly not for America. They're more concerned about China, so they're more concerned about bringing Russia in from the Cold War. There's lots of realpolitik, geopolitics being played out here, more than just, the Ukrainian people. But it does seem to me extraordinary that he wants to hold sort of ceasefire talks with Vladimir Putin about Ukraine without even involving the president of Ukraine.
Well, I think he's involving the president of Ukraine. Ukraine doesn't think it's productive to have him at this talk at this time because, again, he's just scratching the surface. We all agree that Putin is the wild card here. Putin is the loose cannon.
I don't think Donald Trump does agree with that.
Oh, no,
Donald Trump has talked about him being the victim.
No,
he's blamed Ukraine for the invasion.
There's moments where he, wanted to bring in some sort of, I wouldn't call it common sense, but just sort of some understanding, trying to put yourself in Putin's shoes and understand that Ukraine is not perfect here. That's not.
Ukraine doesn't have to be perfect. America's not perfect, but it doesn't give Russia the right to invade it.
Julia, what I'm getting at is that to look at different angles is probably productive, again, when body bags are piling up, right? If we could just go in and snap our fingers and end this thing, we would. And I think the American people are on the side of Ukraine, that's for sure. But they also understand that Russia has 4,500 nuclear warheads and that this guy's a loose cannon. So, not much different than North Korea and China. You're dealing with, unusual leaders.
Yeah, but Putin's not a madman. Putin is not a madman. He's not one of the. He's not an Iranian Ayatollah. Putin is very, very rational, and what he knows is he can get away with invading Ukraine because if America isn't going to basically provide full air cover and absolutely come to Ukraine's aid and allow NATO to come to Ukraine, then he can get away with it. In terms of the territory, Zelensky's made it very clear he's not willing to give up the Donbass region to Vladimir Putin because he knows perfectly well it'd be the staging ground for the next level of the invasion. This is what people in Poland understand, what the Baltic states understand, what Britain understands, Germany understands, and others. That's the reality. But Donald Trump doesn't seem to understand that.
Oh, no, he does understand. Absolutely, he does. But he also understands that the Europeans have provided financial support but not anybody, no one has volunteered to go in and actually defend Ukraine with boots on the
Well,
ground.
the Ukrainians say we don't need that. We've got enough men to do that. What we need is
Yeah,
the
this I
firepower
know
and the air power.
they love the proxy wars, where so Ukrainians will die, Russians will die, but not anybody
Who loves the
nobody
proxy
gets
wars?
in
I
the
don't
game.
want there to be war, but there's a really simple
Yeah,
way for there not to be a war in Ukraine, and that is
yeah,
for
exactly.
America leading NATO to say, Vladimir Putin, your forces will be out of this country. This is the
Yeah.
end. At some point,
And
we're going
that,
to have to
Julia,
confront Putin.
Julia, as sad as it is, that might be the outcome here. The president is completely fine with supporting indirectly. Like, the U.S. will provide the weapons and the munitions at great risk to our own military supplies and our own military capabilities. The Europeans, at least so far, are happy to pay for it, or at least they say they are.
Yeah.
NATO is going to be much stronger because of Ukraine, but also because of the president and what he's been saying since 2018, that NATO is basically a joke, and they're not.
Yeah, and Europe needs to step up and pay for its own defense. And I've always agreed with that.
This can end up escalating the war, more body bags, more weapons from the U.S. indirectly, sold through NATO, paid for by the Europeans, UK taxpayers. That could be the outcome.
That could well be the outcome. But the alternative
Yeah.
outcome is that Russia just sits back for a couple of years and then goes again and then exits the Baltics and then
Right.
it's a NATO nation.
Yeah.
Are we going to, there is no
Absolutely.
good outcome here
So
other than
that's why
Putin being faced down. He's going to be faced.
Yeah.
We have to face him down at some point. I would suggest
Right.
Friday would be the day to do it. Let's talk about
Sure.
let's talk about the vice president though. JD Vance currently on a holiday in the Cotswolds. Personally, I think the Cotswolds are very lovely. I'm not sure that's where I would choose to go on holiday if I was technically the second most powerful man in the world. He was meeting Nigel Farage for breakfast this morning. Apparently having a barbecue and a few beers with Tom Skinner, made famous from the Apprentice. But he's also faced a lot of locals, including apparently Jeremy Clarkson, unhappy about the road closures and the security and all of that. But he's spoken many times in public about his concerns about freedom of speech in the UK and human rights issues. And now we've had a formal accusation from the US State Department accusing the UK of having significant human rights issues, including restrictions on free speech. And this is a new version of the annual Human Rights Practices Report. And it says human rights in the UK worsened in 2024 with credible reports of serious restrictions on freedom of expression, as well as crimes, violence or threats of violence motivated by anti-Semitism since the October 7th Hamas attack. What do you make of this?
Well, he's got a point, or the State Department has a point. So, look, I think JD Vance likes the UK, just like the president likes the UK. He's very fond of the UK, especially of Scotland, but I think the entire UK. That was pretty clear in the first term. I think JD Vance, like the president, is concerned about some problems in the UK right now, and considers the UK a great friend of America and also a great friend personally. I mean, so he even in Munich, when he first started that criticism, he referred to the UK as our friend. And so you never want to see a friend make a mistake. I can understand that. I've lived in the UK for 10 years. I really love the place, but I see what's happening there. I see what's going on with free speech. I see what's going on with the unrestricted illegal migration. And it's painful to watch. It wouldn't bother me as much if it was somewhere I hadn't lived and
yeah,
somewhere.
because you feel the affinity with this nation, and we feel an affinity with you, Greg. We're very happy to have you. But this is the thing: we don't have the First Amendment in this country, and so when we have, for instance, restrictions on people's expressions on social media, which many of us are very unhappy about, but also restrictions preventing contempt of court, so not discussing a court case when it's pending, so that the jury can make their free decision without people affecting their views as online. You guys, because it's a terrible affront to democracy. Now, personally, I'm a very big fan of those contempt of court rules, as long as we are able to speak freely afterwards. But there is no doubt at all we are seeing massive attacks on our rights as free speech. We've got the Online Safety Act. But is the concern from the Americans about British people's freedom of speech and a fellow democracy, the motherland, if you will? Or is it actually all about we need to protect our mates who all came to the inauguration and are multi-billionaires who run big California-based tech companies and they don't like it because they might get fined?
Yeah, I suppose that would be the cynical view, but it's not. It's not the case, right? I mean, people have been making donations forever, and the Democrats, by the way, had 2 times the contributions, and from the
Oh,
same
you're all as
industry.
bad as each other on the donations front.
Yeah, and so look, the president and the vice president are strong believers in free speech. They are frustrated by what's happening in the UK because the UK is their closest friend, their closest ally. I mean, it makes sense, right? I don't think they would care that much if it was some off the run country that no one had ever heard of. So they are, they actually have a
They
real
care.
fondness for the UK.
Well,
So
if they
I
can
believe
help
that.
maintain our freedom of speech or get it back, then we'll be very
Yeah.
happy. Greg Swenson, Chairman of Republicans Overseas, thank you very much indeed. Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Advisors, no doubt at all, the attack on free speech is very real in this country.
It is, and it is getting quite concerning, but I also don't think we need a lecture from JD Vance, who took great exception to a meme going round about himself and has sent off the State Department in the Cotswolds to go knock on the doors of all of the neighbours and ask for their details and their social media presence, and they have turned around and said no. Because I think that free speech has to work all ways, so you can't have a go at our country.
But also,
then have your
isn't a
own
lot of
rules
this
on
about protecting their, their tech bros in the social media who are giving
Of
them
course
money
it
now
is.
and attended the inauguration?
Absolutely is.
Because we're looking at huge fines.
Yeah, they're going to look at. They don't want their friends, their business associates, and their backers to be poorer.
Exactly.
For
I
any
want
of these
freedom of
rules.
speech to be protected because it's a vital component of
course it
democracy. Different reason,
Yes.
not being given donations, but there we are.